The gatekeeper is a person that's in between you and the person that's going to help you get to your next milestone in the sales process. So we do need to define the gatekeeper properly.
Hello Sales Nation and welcome to today's episode of the Salesman Podcast. On today's show we have Ali Mirza, who is the best dressed guest consistently that we've ever had on the show. He is a management consultant with a focus on sales. And on today's episode, he's sharing how we can get past the gatekeeper, both the metaphorical gatekeeper of getting in front of someone and also what to do when you pick up the phone, you make that call to the decision maker, and it's not the decision maker that you're expecting on the other end of the call. You can find out more about Ali over at rosegardenconsulting.com. And with all that said, let's jump into today's episode. Hi, Ali, and welcome back to the Salesman Podcast.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
I'm glad to have you on, mate. We're going to dive into, and we just kind of were touching on this before I click record then, but we're going to touch on a topic that could go many different ways. And I think this is valuable to both people who cold call, and people know my thoughts and opinions on this and how clearly the industry is changing from, cold calling to at least cold calling with context and a bit of research and all this stuff. So that's perhaps another side channel that we can go down later on in the show. But I want to talk about either getting past the gatekeeper, getting around the gatekeeper. What do you do when you meet the gatekeeper on a phone call or even an in-person kind of meeting when you're just popping in to see someone? And as I said, I think this is relevant for people who are cold calling. And then, for example, me, medical device sales and B2B, me trying to get hold of a surgeon to have a sales conversation was forever. There was nursing staff in between. There was management in between. There was full-on secretaries in between. So there's going to be a lot to go at with this one. And Ali, I want to start the show by asking you, mate, before we pick up the phone, is there a way to judge whether there's going to be a gatekeeper there or whether we're going to go straight through to the kind of decision maker that we're trying to talk to?
Yeah, no, I think that we can anticipate that there will be a gatekeeper, right? I mean, whether the gatekeeper is there or not, I think that we should be prepared for it, right? It's the old Boy Scout saying is, prepare for the worst and expect the best or something, whatever it is. I wasn't a Boy Scout, but anyways, it's something to that effect, and you guys know what I'm saying. But so it's better to be prepared and not have to encounter the gatekeeper versus encountering him and not being prepared and getting caught with your pants down. But I think if we were to take a little bit of a step back, I want to preface this whole conversation by saying, the goal is to not encounter the gatekeeper, right? It's not a challenge, and it's not like, we're trying to go through the gatekeeper so we can show, how great of a salesperson we are. So the first thing that we want to do is we do want to try and avoid the gatekeeper. We do want to go directly to the decision maker, the person that we want to speak with. And there's a whole number of reasons for that. But the main reason is, it's easier. It shortens your sales cycle. And then number two, if you're relying on the gatekeeper to pass any sort of messages, of course, they're not trained in selling a product like you are or your service like you are. So it's not going to work out well. So that's kind of the caveat, behind of everything is we're trying to avoid the gatekeeper. That being said, we can plan until we're blue in the face, like Mike Tyson says, right? Everyone's got to plan until they get punched in the face. And now we're on the call. Whether we're on a call where we show up, cold calling, like cold prospecting, showing up at their doorstep or their place of business, we are encountered with the gatekeeper. We do need to know how to finesse the situation, how to get past that person. So, there's a number of different things that
let's before we jump into that, Ali, let's take a kind of like sidestep from this of because we'll have the middle chunk of the show on what we do when we pick up the phone, and it's we get this kind of like, oh god, because we've got to speak to someone that we didn't intend to speak to. How do we avoid the gatekeeper? Are there any strategies to do this? I suppose some of it is common sense, and we'll get onto that. And I want to prerequisite this question with, is it always the best to speak to the gatekeeper? Because I'll just give a practical example from medical devices, from my background, of a lot of the time, if I went and avoided the secretary and went direct to the surgeon, I'd get a response back of, follow the process. The secretary's there for a reason. So I just want to play devil's advocate with it a little bit, just to give a bit of depth to the discussion. But so I'll ask you about 15 things here. But one, should we always try and avoid the gatekeeper? It just makes sense. It's worth that little bit of pushback to kind of like not to get them out of the conversation?
I think to address what you said, absolutely. I think we do need to be conscious of what the sales cycle is, and especially what the buy-in cycle is as well, right? So we do need to pay respect to that a little bit, and play the game a little bit. And yes, if you come out of left field and try and sell directly to the surgeon, and the surgeon says follow the process is there for a reason. Well, yes, follow the process. That being said, not all industries are created the same, right? So and buying cycles change from one industry to another and one vertical to another. Even if you're selling the same medical device and maybe in a hospital versus into a clinic, maybe the buying cycle and the sales cycle are completely different. So you do need to be cognizant of that. So I think you do definitely need to play your cards and don't be too weird. I think where you want to get weird is when a sale is stalled, right? If your sales cycle has reached a point of impasse, and now you don't know what to do, and the gatekeeper's not coming back to you, yeah, you know what, blow it up and go right to the surgeon, right? Who cares? Because you're not getting the sale at this point anyways, right?
Yeah.
But that being said, don't start there. So, but kind of backing up a little bit, the gatekeeper, by definition, is not a receptionist or is not whatever the first line. The gatekeeper is a person that's in between you and the person that's going to help you get to your next milestone in the sales process. So we do need to define the gatekeeper properly. So if the nurse is the first person that you need to speak with, so maybe there's a nurse's admin or a nurse's aide or receptionist that's preventing you from getting to the nurse. So the nurse is not technically always the gatekeeper. So following that channel and following that process is definitely preferred and suggested, but just understand that the gatekeeper is not necessarily the person in between you and the final decision maker. It's the person between you and the person that's going to help you get to the next milestone. And at certain times, we do want to address that person and follow the proper protocol. And then in certain times, we want to sidestep them and go around them. And there's a whole bunch of ways we can do that. But again, a lot of those are industry specific, because I tell you, this is how I did it in insurance sales. You might tell me, well, Ali, that's great for you in insurance sales, but that's never going to work in medical device sales or in aviation sales or whatever, right? So, we do need to understand our own buying cycle. And so that answers the question?
It does. And let me turn this on its head slightly from just the context that you give us there, because this is slightly different to the conversation I was planning on having. But if, for example, again, medical device sales, I want to get the nursing staff to introduce me to the surgeons, who are then going to probably do a product demo, who are then going to introduce me to procurement, who then will introduce me to a CFO or finance to sign everything off. So clearly there's a sales process there. It's pretty well defined. That's the process it has to go down. How do we, or should we, is probably a better question, should we be leveraging the gatekeepers more than what we do? Because I know for me, continuing with this example, if I could get a member of the nursing staff super excited about a endoscope, a camera system, whatever it was, or a theatre manager excited about the fact that there might be cost savings over the long term by switching to our products, and then they introduce me to the surgeon, that's clearly a better scenario than kind of like just a one-liner introduction or just avoiding them altogether.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, and that's kind of the premise that this whole new account-based marketing is built on, right? Is creating champions, and especially in what I've never sold medical devices, but I've consulted with companies that have that's their business. And at the end of the day, from my understanding, that buying process or the decision makers, it's not just one person. It's I think that the average Fortune 500 company, I think the statistic I heard was something to the effect of 7 people are in a buying process now, or decision makers at the final stage. So you need to have buy-in from a lot of people. And now, you ever watch that movie? I always like to bring everything back to movies. You ever watch the movie Dangerous Minds?
No.
Oh, geez, come on now.
I'm scribbling it down. Go on.
Okay, Dangerous Mind with Michelle Pfeiffer and a bunch of other people, like 90s, one of those total like cool ghetto hood movies. Anyways, long story short, she knew she couldn't get everyone in the classroom's attention. But there was that one person, that one cool guy that was sat at the back of the classroom. If he bought in, everybody else would slowly start to fall in line. So there is always that one person, and whether people want to admit it or not, there always is that one person that's typically the loudest person, has the most authority. They may not have the biggest and baddest title. It might not be the CEO. You don't know that, so don't assume that. But there is that one person that kind of everyone falls in line behind. That being said, if there's enough people because you don't know, right, who that person is. So, but if there's enough people chirping around and championing your solution, championing your product, absolutely, it's going to help you in getting you downfield quicker. So I agree with that. I agree with the whole, to certain respects, with the account-based marketing and getting more and more people involved in the buying decision, because they're already involved in the buying decision. It's better to have them on your side opposed to not. But the gatekeeper, remember, you got to understand that person is not a part of the buying decision, right? That person, we do not. I'm a firm believer we do not want that person pitching our solution.
Is this a firm? You said you stopped smiling and you said that very firmly, Ali. Is this a definition that we should drill into our brains of? You've got the account-based selling model. You've got account-based everything is, I think, the cliche term that's thrown around at the moment. Then you've got champions within the account. You've got influence within the account. Is a gatekeeper someone that is just standing in between you and a influencer, for example, and you need to just get through them? Is that, I'm probably not wording that as PC as probably as you'd like to there, but is that a definition that we can make here?
So yes. So let me rephrase so there's no confusion. The gatekeeper is somebody that is not going to be in the room when the final decision is made.
Cool.
Now, so that's not to say that that's the receptionist, right? Maybe the receptionist is not a gatekeeper necessarily, because in a small enough organization, the receptionist may be in the room when that final decision is made, right? Especially, I think about it this way: you're selling printing, not fax machines. Nobody uses a fax machine anymore. Photocopiers and printers and things like that. Well, you know what? Technically, that receptionist is going to be collating and printing and doing a lot of that stuff. So that maybe that supervising manager or the owner of that company is going to want that your quote unquote gatekeepers attend. What's the word I'm looking for?
They're going to want they're going to be sat in the meeting, aren't they?
Right. So in that situation, you definitely want that person to champion. So that person is no longer necessarily a gatekeeper. So that person could be defined as a champion. Versus, let's just say we're talking about a 10,000 person hospital, and you're trying to sell endoscopes. Chances are that person that's sitting at the very front at intake or just reception or whatever is not going to be in that final board meeting. So that person we can define as the gatekeeper, and that's the person we do not want selling our solution. A lot of times it's because that person is not. Forget being PC. That person's not respected in the buying decision. I mean, let's be honest, right? Yeah. The person, because the very rare situation, maybe that person is, but I would hazard to guess maybe something to the effect of 95% of the time that person's their input's not going to be respected. But now you have this person coming and saying, "Oh, Will was here. He's great. He's this." You get this grumpy old crotchety man that's going to be like, you know what? Oh, you're always coming to me. You're always buying everything, and you know what? You know what I mean, right? So. You're now going to be attached with this person that buys everything, and so now your solution's been flushed down the toilet. So because it's not necessarily coming from a place of authority, and they're also not trained the same way you are and well versed in what you sell. You might be selling some life-saving equipment, and the person's like, "Oh, it's a really neat camera." Right? It's like, well, thanks for blowing my sale. You know what I mean? Right? And now that person's thinking, "Oh, this dude's selling cameras. I don't need a camera." Right? I'll go to Walmart if I want to buy a camera. And all of a sudden now your sale's gone. You're just a camera pusher, not endoscopic life-saving equipment, right? So that's 1 out of 100 times maybe it'll work out for you, but I think more often than not you're going to find that it's going to shoot you in the foot, and so it's better to err on the side of caution.
For sure, makes total sense. Okay, we are going to call an account. We'll use the phone. We'll use this we'll continue this to the end of the show now. So we're on the phone. We are more than likely going to encounter a gatekeeper using the definitions that you just outlined here, Ali. What should we do before the call to prepare to speak to a gatekeeper and negate that conversation?
So I think that as far as preparing to speak to a gatekeeper, I don't think that that's going to be unique in every single situation, in the sense that if you're going to encounter a gatekeeper, and when I say a gatekeeper, I'm referring to a frontline receptionist and an individual that is not going to be a part of the buying decision, right? And you should know your buying process and cycle well enough to know, what verticals you're selling in and whether that person's going to be involved or not. So in a situation like that, what we want to do first is assume we're going to hit the gatekeeper so we're not caught off guard. right? Because a lot of, and that sounds like a very simple thing to say, but if you're mentally not ready to make a cold call, and you're also mentally not ready to speak to a gatekeeper, you're going to fumble your words. So first of all, be mentally prepared, right? But before even picking up the phone, we definitely want to be sending out emails and, whatever your social touches and all that other stuff with the person of influence or the person that we're trying to get contact with. We want to know them. We want to know them by their first name. I don't like this. Hi, can I speak to whoever's in charge of, buying printers or buying this? Well, first of all, clearly you're a salesperson, right? And so you're just making your own life harder, right? I mean, maybe in the very rare situation that you'll get passed on, but come on, now with all the information that's out there on LinkedIn and everywhere, you should be able to figure out who the person is. So if you don't even want to do the work, then you know what, piss off, right? Like you're never going to sell anything, right? So you can do a little bit of work. Like, don't be so lazy, right? So figure out who the person is that you're trying to get in contact with, and know them by their first name. Get on the phone, and let's just say Frank, the gatekeeper, picks up the phone, and you say, and I'm trying to reach Will, right? So ring, ring. Frank picks up the phone. Hi, this is endoscopics buyers are us, or whatever it is, or hospitals are us, or whatever it is. Hi, is Will there? Period. Do not say, hi, is Will Barron there? I am Ali calling to sell endoscopics. Don't make it this long, drawn out thing, because why do people do that, right? So if I'm your best friend calling you for lunch, right, I'm just going to say, hey, is Will there, right? It's very, very non-threatening. It's just very casual, and that's what you want to make it, right? You're not lying, and we don't want to lie, because once you get caught in a lie, you're screwed. So we just want to keep our words as simple as possible. So hi, is Will there? Period, right? And then zip your lip. Wait. Then they'll say, yes, Will is here, or Will is not here. But if they say, yes, Will is here, who may I say is speaking? Oh, it's Ali. That's it. They didn't ask, oh, Ali, are you trying to sell Will something? They just said, who may I say is calling? Oh, it's Ali. Tell Will it's Ali, right? As casual as you can make it. Oh, yeah, tell Will it's Ali, right? If like my personality, I'm very obviously very hyperactive, right? So I'll say like, yeah, tell Will it's Ali, right? I make it sound very, very casual and relaxed. And that's exactly how you should make it sound, right? And then say, okay, what's it in regards to? You could throw a little quizzical look on your face, right? And because obviously, a lot of nonverbal stuff's not going to transfer over the phone, but it will, if you throw it on your face, it will actually, once you start speaking, it'll actually transfer through your voice. And so you just say, so how's Will there? See, now you're screwing me around. So how's Will there? Tell him it's Ali. What's it in regards to? It's in regards to the endoscopes. I'm just calling him about that. Again, stay quiet, right? Okay. Do you have an appointment? Remember, most of the time, the person's just going to end it and say, yeah, let me transfer you over to Will. But again, remember, now we're dealing with a really, really well-seasoned gatekeeper that's really putting you to the screws, right? So, do you have an appointment with him? Now, you should have sent Will an email beforehand, right, and said, "Hey, Will, whether it be with your social touch or whatever, or hey, Will, I'm going to be calling you tomorrow at 2:00. Would love to follow up with you in regards to the endoscopes or whatever the case may be, right?" And so, I shot him an email. I told him I'd be calling him at 2:00, right? It's 2:00. You're calling Will, right? What else is the gatekeeper really going to say, right? The only other thing that can happen is the gatekeeper's going to say, hang on, hold on, and go and check with Will and say, Will, Ali's on the phone. Will doesn't know who the hell Ali is. He's going to say, I don't know. Like, either going to say, yeah, put him through, or don't. Most people will put people through. Now, the one thing that you have to understand with the world that we're living in, as far as a lot of people are working from home nowadays. A lot of people have VAs and things like that. The person's not going to necessarily be able to turn around and say, hey, Will, I've got Ali on the phone. Do you want to talk to him, right? They're either just going to patch you through, or give you the direct line and say, here's Will's direct line. So a lot of that type of stuff's going to happen, and this can go off in a million different directions. But and not all of them are going to be successful, right? You're not like that's the one thing, right? I mean, there's no one surefire 100% way to get to the decision maker at all times. But if we engage in the right activities, the results follow. I say that time and time again, because you know what, we want to stack the deck on our side, in our favor, right? So everything that the little script that I've given you, everything is going to help you increase your odds significantly, let's say tenfold. And maybe the maximum, the best odds you could possibly have are 50%, right? It's still better than going to a casino, right? unless you're, what is it, roulette, and if you play the outside, it's like 66% or whatever. But yeah,
I've no idea. And this probably is a good insight to me as an individual. I've never been to a casino, but the only kind of gambling that I ever do is by playing poker, and I only do that because I understand and appreciate all the percentages and the probability between the cards. So even that I'm calculated. So that probably sums me up as a person, as an individual, that I don't like. I like calculated risk, but I don't like luck. Perhaps that's a good way of putting it. So there's two things here, Ali, that struck me as you said that. And they both fall into the wheelhouse that the Sales and Podcast covers, which I'm excited about. And we'll cover them one each. So I'll tell you both and then we'll cover them both. So one is, a lot of this is just confidence, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
And I want to touch on that in a second. But first, a lot of this is also tying in, as you described, like social media touches, sending that email beforehand, breaking through this barrier of awareness before you make what is essentially a cold call if you haven't had any engagement and communication back. Well, that can be the difference, can't it? I know if someone, I don't have a receptionist or a gatekeeper or anything here, but I don't give out my number very often either. So if you've got my number, the only people who have my number are people that I have like opted in to be able to contact with me on the phone. But if I did have, aligning the kind of scenario up here, the podcast gets bigger, we have an office space, we have someone, helping out, kind of probably doing other tasks, but also picking up the phone. If I'm doing interviews and other stuff, I would very likely, and I don't know if I'm kind of millennials. I don't know if I sum up millennials, but I'm very unlikely if someone across the other side of the room goes, "Hey, Will, yada yada's on the phone," and there's no context. I'd probably say, tell them to email me. I'd probably say that. For example, I don't pick up my phone if it's not a number that I recognize. And I don't know whether this is millennials. I don't know whether this is everybody, because we're just so much more busy than we were 10 years ago. There's way more notifications coming our way, so we have to be more selective with everything that hits us. But the point of that mini rant was that all this is predicated on getting through. Clearly, if you don't get through, the call wasn't a waste of time, but it was not the best use of time. So should we be front leveraging all of this up with more time on social, on email, on text, in-person events, whatever it is, to get that know, like, and trust before we even pick up the phone to do somewhat of a cold call?
So I actually quite agree with you there. So as far as people are not going to, like what you said, let someone turns to you and says, "Hey, Ali's on the phone," you might just say, just tell him to email me. I don't know who the hell Ali is, right? Which is a very likely situation. But here's the thing. Now Ali emails you. You remember the name Ali. Ali was trying to get on the phone with you. You're gonna be like, what does this dude want, right? So because the whole thing is, right, we're not instantly going right to the cold call, right? I mean, gone are the days of the yellow pages where we just kind of search through there. So, but the thing is, you need to be well versed in everything. So bring it back to a situation of sports, right? I play basketball. I played very competitively. I could probably beat you one-on-one. I get really aggressive when I start talking about basketball, right?
Let me add you context for here. I played for the GB under-16s team. I wasn't tall or strong or big enough to play for anything beyond 16 because I was just as skinny then as what I was now. But Ali, this seems like a challenge that might materialize at some point in the future.
I will literally fly to Leeds to play one-on-one. We will. Okay, so there we go. I'm going to do it. It's going to happen. Wait a minute. You've been coming to the States quite a bit, so you got to stop off in Atlanta, man. Anytime. Just bring your sneakers.
Good man. Got it. Right. It's a date.
All right. Anyways, going back to it. Why? Just because you're a point guard, all right? Let's just say just because you're a point guard doesn't mean you don't have to know how to shoot. Doesn't mean you don't know how to post up or whatever the case may be, right? And you need to be well versed, right? Doesn't mean that's your specialty. Doesn't mean I'm going to close every single deal by cold calling. But you should know how to call and pick up the phone and what to say, right? What I just said there is not something that you need to spend years and years practicing, right? Now that you know it, right, you just try it 2 or 3 times and you're efficient or effective enough at it, right? These are the little things that you do need to know well enough to be able to execute, even though it's not a part of your daily prospecting or a part of your daily sales cycle. But you should know it because it's very, very simple. But I agree with you that it kind of leads us to kind of a bigger conversation about what are more effective methods. And I agree, as far as cold calling and cold prospecting may not be the best. I'll tell you, 2016, we did I don't know, plus or minus 15 to 20 projects at my company. I think maybe 2 of them were not referral or introductions. So, and that's not to say I cold prospected them either. So if that gives you some context. So I'm the dude that's trying to teach you and tell you this is how you cold call, but I don't even do it because I know the effectiveness of it, right? I'm not just gonna sit here and lie to you and tell you, oh no, man, I cold called it. I went uphill in the snow and downhill barefoot, and no, let's not lie about things on the podcast. Let's tell the truth. Most of my business comes to me through referrals and through introductions. That's how you need to be leveraging your time is who's in your network and go out that way. I really would like to know all these people who are talking about social selling and all this other stuff. How many times when you retweet someone or you do this or you do that, does that actually really lead to money? Right? I'm no saint, man. I'm in my business to make money. I think you're in your business to make money, and I think 90% of other people are in their business to make money. So how are we all making money, right? And the people that are selling these pipe dreams of this is how you do this and this is how you do this. I'm not saying that they're charlatans and scam artists. I'm just saying they really do need to preface and say, yeah, you should know how to do this, and this is how you do it. But understand, if that's all you do, you're going to be broke. Right? You should say that. And I will tell you right here that if you were relying on cold calling to become a billionaire, you probably will be broke. But that leads us to kind of going back to what we were talking about. And I know I've been rambling for a minute now, but you need to be well versed. You need to know how to do a little bit of everything, but understand where most of your money is going to come from, and then double down, drill for oil there, but still be able to do everything. Because in a situation where your typical straight line approach has hit a stall, you should know, okay, shit, if I got to pick up the phone, this is how I do that. If I run into a gatekeeper, this is how I do that. If this happens here, this is what I do here. So you need to be well-versed enough to be able to do a couple other things. But at the end of the day, you're not going to be able to make money on all of those routes. Does that make sense?
Makes total sense. And you have just outlined and summed up and wrapped up something that I'm on my soapbox about at the moment. I'm talking about it all the time on the show. And that is, one, the term social selling is complete bullshit. It's just sales. The social platforms are what people are spending time on. That's how you can get in front of them. It's how you can get that know, like, and trust before you pick up the phone, or after you pick up the phone, or after you've closed a deal and you want to upsell, or you want to cross-sell, or whatever you're doing, and you need that further rapport, that deeper relationship to do that. So that's one thing. And the other thing that I want to ask you here, and I think I can gauge your response on this, but again, it's something I'm trying to drill into the audience's mind as I'm doing this. So and we can talk about this kind of when we finish recording, but I'm just about to close the first 6-figure deal that the podcast and the company that holds the podcast has ever done. And a lot of this is coming down to kind of in-person meetings at these live events that we're doing, then email follow-up, then phone calls, then touches over social media, just to keep top of mind with different things and to push certain bits of content which this company wants to kind of like own and jump on top of, pushing them out to the right people, within their organization. So that includes Facebook ads, pushing our videos, which they essentially want to kind of like own and sponsor, to members within their organization. So when the kind of decision makers that I speak to day to day, when they go to get it signed off by procurement finance know who I am. So I'm melding all of these different techniques together, and it's social selling, but it's just every platform. So what I want to ask you here, Ali, is before we move on to the confidence piece, and we'll wrap up with that, but should we just do what the market wants us to do? And that might be a market of one if you're kind of going after one individual, but is that what matters? Just communicating with individuals the way that they want to be communicated with, not the best way for us to spam out 500 emails that gets 1 or 2 replies.
I think it how do I answer this question? Because I think you kind of asked a little bit of one foot in each camp with. But so you've got to sell the way that's going to make you money, right? And now, if that's social selling, that's what it is. And if it's a certain type of prospecting and a certain type of methodology, then it is what it is. But don't become beholden to one particular methodology. Is what is kind of, I think, what you and I are both saying, right? And I think that's the common thing is, we can call things and brand things whatever we want. And this is the big thing. This is why I don't like CrossFit. Right, because it's like it's been branded and it's trademark name, right? And it's just jumping jacks and running around and acting like a lunatic, and if it helps you lose weight, then it helps you lose weight, then great. But why we gotta brand things? Why we gotta label things all the time? And that's what I don't like about it. So so I do agree with you. You just got to sell the way that it's being sold, and you can call it whatever the hell you want to call it. It doesn't mean that that's one way is better than another way. Like social selling is far superior to email marketing or whatever the case. I mean, at the end of the day, like, what makes you money, go do it, right? I mean, that and be good at it, right? Like, I don't know, man. Did I go off on a?
I think you've made a slight distinction and a slight difference here from how I defined it. But I think, I know you're a good guy, so I know we're going down the same path with this. But I defined it as we should, for example, communicate on the platforms that our buyers want to communicate on. Whereas you turn that slightly on its side and defined it as we should communicate on the platforms that allow us to make money. And clearly they go hand in hand. And, if you were, there's certain people in the industry, there's certain people that I won't have on the podcast who go all in on this is going to make us the most money, but it's going to burn our kind of future potential customers because we're just hammering people. So I know you're not talking about that, but I just thought that was worth pointing out that makes more sense if you want to keep your job, because clearly that's the crux of all of this, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think again, just going back to what I said as far as, yes, we have to communicate with where our buyers want to be communicated with, but that's also ultimately is what's going to lead us to money. And for me, it's just more, don't label things and don't say this is the be all end all, because you know what, at the end of the day, as soon as something becomes the be all end all, that's the sales pitch. And then that's no different than what we refer today as, that was a sleazy car salesman tactic, right? And that's because when that stuff came out in the 80s, right, that was revolutionary, right? That was like, wow, this is communication 101. But now that it's become, now that everyone knows it, and as soon as you walk into a dealership and they say, quite the weather we're having, to elicit your yes response, look at this dirtbag, he's trying to sell me, right? So, I mean, within the next 15, 20 years, and maybe not even that fast because the world's changing at a rapid clip now. I mean, maybe it's 5 years. Maybe 5 years. It's like as soon as you get a tweet or as soon as you get a LinkedIn message. I mean,
it's now. It's literally,
it is now.
People will retweet my tweets and then ask to come on the show. And it makes me feel a bit like gross that they couldn't just ask to come on because they've got enough value to give to the audience. They feel like they have to, because we talk about it in the show, they have to do all these little weird steps.
Right. And I think that, it's not about, and one of the things that I was telling one of my clients the other day, it's not about being new, right? It's about being different. Right. And so one of the things that we've been instituting with a lot of our clients has been a lot of the tactics that were working in the 50s and 60s and 70s, because no one's using them anymore. And the millennials don't know that, hey, that's a greasy sales tactic, right? Because at the end of the day, it's just about communication, right? Because when someone's got their wall up, you can't communicate with them. So you need to break that wall down and have that conversation with them. Unfortunately, not a lot of people are like you and I, where we can just walk in any situation, and just kind of have a conversation. So we do need to give people steps. When we give people steps, and if every single person's following those exact same steps, well, that's a sales pitch. So we need to change it up every once in a while. So it really is about following different steps that still take you down the same road. I mean, from Atlanta to New York, there's probably 100 different roads that I could take, right? But if there's one road that everyone is taking, that's going to have a lot of backlog and it's going to have a lot of traffic jams on it. So if we took another route, still get there, it's still the same thing, and that, I don't know, I hope that explained it.
Yeah, makes total sense. Ali, one final kind of point on this, and we'll wrap up with this. I think you may have already given us the answer, but I just want to clarify it. What do you say to the individual who, so I've done 300 plus of these interviews, and I can jump on Skype now with pretty much anyone and talk about sales, entrepreneurship, marketing, business without any set questions. And it's a skill that develops over time. But the first kind of 20, 50 interviews I did were absolutely terrible, and it makes me cringe looking back over them. But you've got to do it, and I don't think there's any hacks for the interview process. I think it's just kind of like learned, learning that if you ask this, someone will do this. Seeing your face go, oh, it means that I've asked the wrong question. You deviate away quickly from it. And a lot of it is, similar to the sales process and the art of sales versus the science of it. So for someone who's listening to this now, and you described that we should be kind of like nonchalant on the phone, we should be chilled, we should be relaxed when we're dealing with a gatekeeper, and essentially we are being so, not blasé is the wrong word, but we're being so chill in the conversation that we're portraying that we're super relaxed, and so it's easier for someone to drop their guard a little bit and not be super hyper aware that we're after something. How do we go about getting to that point? And clearly on the phone is a conversation that this happens a lot. I think it's easier to do in person. It's easier as a skill to learn in person quicker. But how do we learn to do it on the phone? And I think you might have answered this in that we just need to do it 4, 5, 6 times and just get on with it.
Yeah, I think one aspect of it is, how you become more comfortable is by being somewhere where you've been before, right? So I think a lot of it has to do with, you're gonna have to burn a few calls in order to kind of understand, okay, what is the system, what is the cycle? But I think the other thing that we can also do is obviously shadow somebody, right? Somebody else, and maybe in the interview process it's a little bit different as far as what you're talking about. But as far as with other salespeople, they can shadow someone that's a little bit more veteran. But the main problem, I think, why people are not confident is they don't know what the next step is, right? They don't have that mental picture, that skeletal understanding of what the milestones are and what that sales process looks like. And I think that that's probably the biggest deterrent in helping people get somewhere quickly, right? Because as much as I screw up with you, right? But eventually I'm going to find that first, let's just say that there's, 10 steps to a sales cycle, right? You have to do everything properly in order to get to step 9, right? But I'm going to burn 5 or 6 calls before I get from step 1 to step 2. Then I'm going to have to burn, but then I got that down. But then I'm going to have to burn 5 or 6 more calls to get from step 2 to step 3, and so on and so forth. And by the time I get to step 9, I've burnt, let's just say 80 calls plus or minus. I may have quit by then, right? So you know what I mean? Or I might have gotten fired by then, right? So, or got, whatever the case may be. So I think if we can give salespeople a full understanding of what the trajectory is, where they're going, what point A is and what point B is, let them know all the milestones throughout that entire sales cycle, and give them best practices to get from one to another, right? And then, so that will ramp it up much, much quicker, right? Because so as soon as, you're going to burn a few going from step 1 to step 2, but you're not going to be like in brand new territory when you finally get to step 2. You're going to be like, okay, I knew where I was going and I know where I'm supposed to go as far as step 3 goes, because a lot of it is just simple conversation jitters, right? And so just jumping on the phone 2 or 3 times, those conversation jitters are gone. And if you understand that full skeletal sales cycle, now you can actually get from step 1 to step 10, maybe on your 10th call, right? And don't have to wait till 80 or 90 and keep burning and make the mistakes between step 4 and 5 because you've shed the jitters of the conversation in your first 4 or 5 calls. So part of it is, your little conversation jitters, and once you get rid of those, and now you've got the confidence. But then the other part is not knowing where to go, right? So if we give them the direction, let them burn their first few calls, they'll be good to go. But if we don't give them the direction, they're going to keep burning the calls at every single stage, and then that's where the problem really comes in.
For sure. And I just want to add one little piece to this for any of the new sales professionals that are joining us on the show who are perhaps going through this burning of potential customer process, which everyone goes through. I've told the story on the show before. My first ever kind of like sales prospecting call, my new manager was sat behind me. I did half an hour of research for the call, and basically I just rung up, got straight through, booked an appointment, and it was the easiest thing ever on the back of the brand of the company I was working for, not any skill on my behalf, but it was one of those you have to just suck it up and get on with it. But I just want to mention this, that people care less about you screwing up in sales from the buyer's perspective, as long as you're being authentic and you're not screwing anyone over, and you are being blunt and open that you are new to the role or you're new to the position. As long as you're open and honest about it, people care very little if you make a mistake or if you get to the gatekeeper and you're not quite sure what to say. Clearly, we want to fake it till we make it to a certain extent. But I think I'm the new guy or I'm the new sales rep card doesn't get played enough. And I know when I moved from one medical device company to the other, I got introduced and met everyone and spent literally 3 months being the new guy. by just ringing surgeons up and being like, "Hi, I'm the new guy. Can I just spend a bit of time with you just to see what everyone's up to?" Whereas there was other people who were swapping and changing within the organization, and they didn't want to be the new guy. Their egos wouldn't let them. And so I just wanted to make that point there that it's fine to kind of make mistakes, and most people don't remember them a week later anyway.
No, and I think the point that we really need to hammer on what you said there is, as long as you're being genuine and authentic, right? If you make a mistake, right, and really what you did was you got caught in a lie, yeah, people are not going to forgive that. But if you genuinely made a mistake and you say, hey, look, you know what, this is my first time, ever doing this particular type of deal or whatever the case may be, hang on, I don't know, let me find out. Yep. People really appreciate that. And people would rather prefer that you say, I don't know, let me find out. I still to this day, I mean, I'm supposed to be the expert. People are calling me the expert, and I'll tell them all the time, look, man, I don't know. Let me find out. Let me do some research. People appreciate that because then when I come back to them, they have more trust and confidence in me that I'm not just going to say whatever the first thing that comes to my mind. But then there's a lot more validation, credibility behind what my suggestions, because they're like, well, he did research it, and this is what he landed on. We're not paying him big bucks for no reason. So it really does validate if you do say, hang on, I don't know, let me find out, because they're going to hear it in your voice when you're trying to bullshit them, and they're going to be like, yeah, he said that, but I don't think he knew what he was talking about. I think we've all been on that buyer's side where the salesperson says something to us, and the salesperson's probably in the back of the mind be like, oh yeah, got through that one. And the buyer's just like, yeah, okay, fat chance if I believe that, right? So you're better off just saying, look, I don't know, I'm new, or let me find out, whatever the case may be. But yes, I 100% agree with you.
Definitely. As you said it yourself, but the word that I was thinking as you were going through that was bullshit. And I think most people, we are naturally designed and socially conditioned and almost evolved into understanding that, because it means that 10,000 years ago, it means someone's likely to, when you turn around, they're going to club you over the head and rob all your stuff. So clearly that isn't the case now in B2B sales necessarily, but right. All those instincts are still there. And with that, Ali, mate, I've got one final question to ask everyone that comes on the show. You've answered it before, but I'm going to ask you it again. And that is, if you could go back in time and speak to your younger self, what would be the one piece of advice you'd give him to help him become better at selling?
I think the first answer I gave you was to be a lot more humble. So I definitely would be a lot more humble, but I think that the next one would be ask a lot more questions, right? The more questions I ask, the more and more knowledge I gain. So I definitely would have asked a lot more questions, because I was around some really sharp people back in my old days. So yeah, so I would have asked a lot more questions.
Do you think that is something that you will just continually tell yourself forever? Because I know with me, and now, especially with the live events that I'm doing and these in-person interviews, I know I'm not making enough, one, effort, and then two, like, conscious decision to ask better questions and get essentially free mentoring from all these people.
You know what? I think asking questions, I think I'll never stop. And it doesn't always have to be directly, with relative to your profession, right? It could be anything, right? If you just get to, again, what we were talking about off air was, if you ask enough questions, random questions, you get to the root of it. It really helps you understand how these people think. So you get around someone that's successful, ask them what their morning routine is, right? Even if it could be a fantastic salesperson, ask them what their morning routine is. What movies do they watch? What are they? Because this is how their makeup is. And if you can understand what their makeup is, then you can kind of reverse engineer and kind of follow that track back that. So. Yeah, absolutely. Asking questions, getting free mentorship really, really will help you out.
Amazing stuff. Well, for Ali, everyone who's excited about learning more about you, everything that you're doing, the management consulting and all that, tell us a little bit about Rose Garden Consulting and where we can find it.
rosegardenconsulting.com. If you've got a sales process that needs fine tweaking, or you need to build out a sales process, instead of going on Craigslist or monster.com and hiring someone and crossing your fingers, we can definitely help you out with that and put together a system that will really help you.
Good stuff. Well, I'll link to that in the show notes to this episode over at salesmanpodcast.com. And with that, Ali, I want to thank you for your time. I want to thank you for insights. I want to thank you for kind of getting real practical with this as well. There's a whole bunch of anecdotes. There's a whole bunch of practical applications. I think the audience will really be able to listen to this show and put it into practice, on their next call. So I appreciate that, mate. And I want to thank you for joining us on the Salesman Podcast.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much.